introductions. Again, we got an exciting conversation with you today. Let's start with some introductions with the team. My name is Marlon Stiles. I'm a proud partner here at Learner Center Collaborative. Excited to be here joining you today to talk about all things leadership. Looking forward to the conversation. I'm going to talk to my good friend, her real name, Miss Katina Hancock.
Hi, everybody. My name is Katina Hancock. I am partner here at Learner Center Collaborative, and I am joining you from Weatherford, Texas. And I'll kick it over to Cesar.
Hey. Welcome, everybody. Just a quick hello to Heather Golly from Bonzo Unified. My name is Cesar Morales, partner here, tuning in from Carlsbad, California. Passing the mic off to Miss Ali Wong.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ali Wong. I am brand new to LCC. I'm a new Director of Strategic Partnerships. I'm really excited to be here and talk about leadership with you today.
Again, we've got a great panel. Before we kick this thing off, I've got to throw a quick shout out to my guy, Ryan, who's coming to us from Canada. That's right, Learner Center Collaborative International today on our webinar. We want to share a few insights with you today before we get in a deep dive with our conversation. Learner Center Collaborative, we take a good deal of pride in being partners with educators to define whole learner outcomes, design meaningful learning experiences, and most importantly, create enabling conditions for learner-centered education. We're excited to have you today. We live our vision, our mission, and live our values every single day as an organization. And you'll see some of those in our conversation as we get into leadership today. We do want to give you some access to our approach and the network that we really take a lot of pride in around research, around networking opportunities and partnerships with school districts. As you can see, as we really look at this idea of an ecosystem here, we have a very dynamic approach where we take a great deal of pride in connection, learning, growing, and sharing with partners all across the country. As you look at our map here across the United States, and hopefully one day in Canada with Ryan up there in Canada, we are partnering with a number of education school systems and ecosystems all across the country, from East Coast to West Coast, down to Texas, where Lauren's from, out in California, where Heather's coming to us from. We take a lot of pride in working with educators to do what we can, inspire learner-centered communities. We'll give you just a few couple partners that we have here on this next slide with some visuals around some specific partners that we're partnering with at the state level. You'll see we're teaming up with the Utah State Board of Education, the Indiana Department of Education, the Colorado Department of Education, and the top half of that screen, a number of district partners that we're really excited about their work that we're going to feature here in our conversation around learner-centered leadership. Special shout out to all of our partners you see on the screen. Thank you for allowing us to be trusted partners in your learner-centered journey. Today, we are thrilled to dive into a conversation around leadership. We're going to toss it over to my guy Cesar here in just a few moments. We want to frame your mind here really quick to make sure you get a chance to see what's on our minds and the ecosystem that we celebrate here at Learner Center Collaborative. Cesar, you want to take a few moments and talk to us about our ecosystem?
Absolutely. Before I do, I want to welcome Sarah, who's tuning in from Germany right now. The network just keeps growing. The energy just keeps growing. But before we get moving, I want to make sure I anchor us to what we call our learner-centered ecosystem. As I unpack these concepts, these constructs, one thing I want to name is that these things are interworking. It's not linear. One thing feeds into the other. And so keep that in mind as I go through this. So where we start is we first start with these whole learner outcomes. And this is about defining the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that each local community names as their high priority success metrics. And the beauty of our approach is that we engage the entire community. We start by listening to learners, listening to those closest to the opportunity, and then together co-design what these whole learner outcomes will be for that particular community. And as you can see, the aesthetic is distinct and unique, whether you have Laguna Beach on the lower left with the wave because they're located right there on the coast, or Encinitas with that poinsettia looking logo in the middle because of the influence that the poinsettia has had in their local communities. So this is about you and a reflection of your community. Then we talk about what are the commitments we have as far as the learning experiences. Where we anchor to is offering authentic, personalized, competency-based, and inclusive and equitable learning experiences in order to get to those whole learner outcomes. Next, these are 6 elements around school design. I ask you to imagine being part of a school system, whether it's district or a site, where there's a clear and confident identity. Who are we? Where are we going? And then being crystal clear about how you're going to get there. And then within the flow of the school day, you have smaller learning communities. I'll be touching on an aspect of this around an advisory period, providing those real world, authentic learning experiences, going from compliance and completion to assessment of those whole learner outcomes, as well as distributing the leadership and ensuring that there are constructs to support teacher collaboration. And then finally, which is the space we're going to be in today, are enabling conditions. How do we make sure that we can move this work forward? And so we need to have coherence, communication, aligned systems, talent development and growth, as well as those partnerships. And I know my partner, Marlon, is going to tap into some of those examples from the field, if you will. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Marlon.
Yeah, we got a great conversation. This is going to be a really deep dialogue here. Ali, excited to have you join us today. Katina, Cesar, looking forward to some of your comments as well. We're going to come off screen so you can see all four panelists as we just have some conversation between each other. I'm going to toss out the first question to get us started here, and let's just enjoy some dialogue. Not sure who wants to go first. Ali, I know you're the paper, rock, scissors champion on the team, so I'm not sure if we want you to go first or not because you always end up going with scissors. We know your pattern by now. But first question of the day around leadership, and again, this is around effective techniques to be a really impactful learner-centered leader. We all have served as learner-centered leaders in previous positions inside school systems. I would love to hear some dialogue around what specific structures or practices that you implemented in your school communities in previous positions that really celebrated your opportunity to cultivate a learner-centered culture. So let's toss that out, have a little bit of dialogue, see what's on your mind.
Awesome. I'm happy to jump in since Cesar just did a really nice job going through our ecosystem model. As a principal of the Vista Academy of Visual and Performing Arts in San Diego County, that was the exact approach that we took when we were charged to rebrand as a visual and performing arts magnet school in the district. And although I didn't know it had those unique elements at the time, as I came over to Learner-Centered Collaborative and I've been able to do this work across the system, it's been really great to be able to name those parts and pieces. And so I think, again, going back to getting really clear about what are the knowledge, skills, and dispositions we care about most for our learners, developing the types of learning experiences that allows the educators, the families, even the community to know what we're doing day in and day out in our classrooms, on our campus, and within the community, provides clarity and coherence for the community to really rally around the kids. And then we really crafted, what are those big moves? What's our structure going to be? What's our calendar going to look like? How are we going to collaborate together, not only as adults, but create those opportunities for our kids? And so we didn't really call it a framework for the future like we do with some of our partners, but having that multi-year plan that we focused on year over year and having some really great lead measures that we evaluated over time allowed us to eventually become one of 3 schools in California to be acknowledged for multiple awards from the state. So it was a journey for sure. And it took, I think, just shy of 5 years for us to be authorized as an IB, International Baccalaureate Primary Years Program School, as well as one of the premier visual and performing arts schools in Southern California. So I think that, like, really getting clear so that the community understands who you are, what you do, and what you aspire to accomplish. And I know, Cesar, you are going to touch on an element of that. So, Ali, I think I'm going to make you go last now. No rock, paper, scissors here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna springboard off of that idea of having a crystal clear, confident identity. Who are we? What do we stand for? And the construct that I'm going to lean into is having an advisory period, right? And sometimes this is tough to launch because of many different reasons. But at Sage Creek High School, one of the elements in our mission statement was a declaration stating we are an interconnected learning community. And so leveraging that commitment, it was a non-negotiable. We need an advisory period where there are 3 purposes, but the one that we really lean into, it's about forging strong relationships between students and adults and then the students and students. And so that was the big key driving force around the advisory period. And I'll tell you what, as a school principal, I had my own advisory class, and to be able to stay with those students from 9th grade through 12th grade and experience getting your driver's license, asking that person to prom, getting your braces off, making that final shot, you get to experience high school. It's humanizing for everybody involved. The other things that we took care of in advisory was college and career preparation. So engaging in strengths finders, interest inventories, college and career exploration, really maximizing those relationships to get to know your students and really know who are you and where do you want to head and how can I support you in that path. So an advisory period is a high lever to really drive learner-centered education. So I'm going to pass it over to Marlon.
I feel like I should be taking notes right now, Cesar. I love the idea of a learner-centered leader in it with the learners. That's pretty amazing. I need to talk to you a little bit more about how you facilitated as a principal, your own advisory. I love it, love it, love it. To our panelists, just super fast, real quick for those joining us, our attendees. Any questions you have, feel free to drop them in the chat as we facilitate our dialogue here through the next several minutes. We'll try to pull some of your questions into our conversation and try to address those. So feel free to drop them in the chat anytime. I'm going to piggyback off both of my teammates here. The idea of being crystal clear so your community knows who you are and they have something to stand for alongside of you, your identity. I'll tell a quick story. In Middletown City Schools, I was superintendent there for 6 years. Classic urban school district, did some amazing things for kids. But as I think of some learner-centered practices, I think of our Ready Now 100 campaign. We came up with our framework for the future. We called it Passport to Tomorrow. It was a crystal clear North Star, really inspired by our guiding coalition and a number of community members. We knew where we wanted to head and how to get there. A key component of that for me as a leader is we had to create opportunities for some seats at the table, for some partnerships across the community, to dream up some pretty unique experiences for our learners aligned to what we had inside of our Passport to Tomorrow. So we had a bold ambition in an urban environment to acquire 100 endorsements for our Passport to Tomorrow from community organizations, employers, businesses, higher education institutions, 100 commitments with different partners. Now, this wasn't, hey, can you write us a check for the ice cream social for the honor roll at the end of the school year type partnership. This was all about unique, dynamic experiences for our learners. So, in order to endorse, we were requiring, like non-negotiables, requiring these things. Number one, you had to put your name on our Passport to Tomorrow so that we could advertise it to our learners about the community members who were there to support them in their journeys to live their aspirations. Number two, we didn't want money. We wanted human capital and expertise to come into our school systems, but also allow our learners to come out on sites to these organizations to engage in some experiences. So if we had 10 African American females at our high school that wanted to be engineers when they grew up, we're going to tap our endorsements in our Ready Now 100 to look for some African American female engineers out in our region to come speak to our kids. Just an example. And then number three, the most unique thing I think that was exciting for us is we looked at our learner profile and all the outcomes inside of and the competencies we were building in our students. If we felt if we did our job as adults in the school community, K-12, and our kids left the system with those outcomes in our learner profile, we really got excited that if we did our job, our kids were ready to go. And that non-negotiable number three is that if you endorse the Passport to Tomorrow as a partner, then when our students showed up on site to apply for employment, that you guaranteed them an interview. Now, if we did our job, they walk in with those outcomes and competencies and skills that we know they needed to be successful in your business and career field. We also knew that if they applied for higher education or enlistment, they'd have some support to really navigate that admissions process so that they could find success in that higher ed institution or an enlistment agency. So for me, these learner-centered practices, yes, getting crystal clear about who we are, where we're headed, North Star, having a very serious identity, but creating some spaces at tables for our community to be able to participate and really elevate some of the aspirations of our kids. Ali, I would love to hear some things you've done because there were some amazing stories about the impact you had as a leader.
Thank you. I agree with everything that my colleagues have already said, and it's a lot of pressure to go last, but my experience is as a school principal of High Tech Elementary in San Diego, California. And I'd love to speak to kind of my vision for learner-centered education and what that looked like at my school from that experience. For me, if we want student-led classrooms where learners are really having ownership over their own education, then I believe that we have to first create teacher-led schools where educators are empowered to lead and innovate and collaborate to shape meaningful learning experiences for students. So I think if you are a school leader, like the first thing you can do, right, is really empower teachers. Because when teachers have power over what they're learning, how they're learning, how they're going to apply it, how we're going to measure their success and challenges within whatever that thing is, they will do the same thing for their students. And so if I had to make like 3 points, I would say my first point is cultivate a mindset of teacher leadership. How can you really empower teachers to make important instructional decisions within the school and not just in a performative way? One thing that I did at my school is we formed lots of different teacher-led committees where teachers were making decisions about our professional learning plans for the year, where they were making plans about the types of curriculum that we use and adopt as a school. So how can you really foster those teacher leaders so they experience learner-centered education firsthand, and then they want to do that same thing for their students? Second, there needs to be a shift from compliance to curiosity. When we are afraid of taking risks, right, then it becomes really hard to experiment. So how can we mirror the inquiry-driven practices that we want for our students with our teachers? One way that I did that was I utilized improvement science, and my teachers got to pick an area that they wanted to work with. They collaborated with each other in teams, and then really systematically examined their practices, measured what worked and what didn't work as they move forward to really build better practices. And then my last point is that asking teachers is to take on more leadership can feel like extra work, just like it can feel like that to students when teachers are asking students to take on extra work. So I think that as a leader, it's really important to be mindful about, if we're gonna have teacher leaders, please also balance that by prioritizing well-being for both teachers and students, right? So one way that I did that was really making sure that my staff had time to bond and build community together. This work is so incredibly hard, and the thing that makes it joyful is having best friends who are doing this work alongside you. So I actually have a question for the three of you. You guys have been at LCC much longer than me. And so I'd love to hear a little bit from each of you about some of the amazing school districts across the country that you've partnered with. So I'd love to hear like who's a learner-centered leader that you've been working with that deserves a shout out? What have they been doing? What are some of the bright spots that they've demonstrated as a learner-centered leader?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one on, or to kick us off, if you will, to ignite this conversation. I'm going to build on something you said, Ali, is about how do we energize our teachers, and I would say even all those in the system, to really build the momentum towards a learner-centered shift. Someone that comes to mind would be Dr. Chad Mayberry over at Laguna Beach. And when I think of his role in shifting Laguna Beach towards a learner-centered paradigm, I think of a leader who is both a visionary and an orchestrator, if you will. He had the tenacity to be able to cast out a clear vision of where we're headed, and at the same time bring into the fold the many different work streams that take place in a school system, and make sure that there is a tight alignment and coherence, and really identify what do we need to stop doing and what do we need to start doing, and continue doing. And that just, it takes a mastermind to be able to manage those tensions. The other big piece that he did in putting together the framework for the future is that early and often he brought in students, parents, classified staff, certificated staff, so that there were plenty of on-ramps to both get energized and provide input into that co-construction of the community framework. And so those are the things that stand out as far as being able to move this important work, is being able to maneuver the different phases in the change management. So just want to give out Dr. Chad Mayberry a shout out on that work. How about you, Ms. Katina? Who are you thinking?
Yeah, the first person that comes to mind is my good friend. We spend a lot of time together, Dr. Lori Gonzalez in Lamont Elementary School District in Central California. And I think what really makes their journey stand out is this notion of go slow to go fast. So when she was hired approximately 3 years ago, the board charged her with turning the district around. We need our kids to be successful. We want them to find joy at school. And so, kind of like I did at my school, we did this framework for the future approach, where we started with mission, vision, values. We drafted the portrait of a learner, the learning model, and the big moves. What were we going to do in the next 3 to 5 years? And the group that did that is who you kind of just described, Cesar. How do we bring in teachers, classified, leaders, students, family, community members to really co-design what the system desires for their learners? So that took us a good 7 or 8 months to accomplish. And Ryan had asked a question earlier, about how this learner-centered journey can often feel to folks like it's an added thing. It's more pressure. They're already tired. They're like burning the candle at both ends. And I would say, indeed, that is what education kind of looks and feels like right now. But when we get really clear about what we care about, it makes it way easier to say no to things. It makes it way easier for us to prioritize, because if it's not aligned to the elements of our framework, we don't do it. Or we find an alternate way to accomplish that thing that maybe still has to happen. So after we got Lamont's framework in place, we then had to phase that in. It wasn't all of a sudden everybody does everything all at once. We got some early adopters that really started to do some professional development around the learning model. How could they become better equipped to design those experiences in the classroom? So we had a core group of approximately 30-ish folks that did that. The guiding coalition continued, and so they were working on strategy around how do we shift not only our early adopters, but our families and the system as well. And so really thinking about professional development, and we had different tiers of professional development depending on where teachers were feeling. And so I think being able to create opportunities for folks to get kind of like socialize the different elements of the work that we're doing, but not feel like they have to tackle everything all at once was super helpful. And then the last thing I would just say that Lori did a really great job about was we want to celebrate when we see things that are already working in the system. And so when we define the framework elements, we could say, look at this is already happening and we're now calling it this thing. So it boosted people's ability to collaborate much more effectively because we were talking the same language. And there were a lot of amazing things happening. So to be able to celebrate all of those bright spots was really impactful. And if I can encourage all of you leaders as you embark on this work, find a way often to celebrate the people that are doing the work, because it goes so far into like creating momentum and energy in the work.
Great.
I agree, Katina. We need more encouragers in our profession, and encouragers love to celebrate. So if we get more folks who definitely have a huge impact. I'm gonna celebrate. Can we cheat and do more than one? Is that
You can
okay?
do whatever you want. It's your show.
Martin rules. Martin rules.
I'm gonna cheat. So we gotta throw some shout outs here. So first of all, I'm gonna shout out Dr. Nanez from Ector down in Texas. Again, a great partner with us last year in our connections cohort. But Dr. Nanez and the team, and I know Lauren's on the call as well. Dr. Nanez and the team presented at a conference last year. We got a chance to see everything they're doing in a pretty unique way. But as they really start bringing their learner-centered desires and aspirations to life, they've got some pretty dynamic structures in place around oversight of the big moves that they're really trying. Yeah, that's right. Hashtag go team ECISD. They've got some structures to really ensure some really high quality collaborative oversight as they go to execute some of their big moves. And we've talked to so many leaders across the country as we enter implementation phase. They're like, how do I know I'm on track? How do I know if I need course correction? Well, if you take a look at some of the practices that Ector County has down in Texas, Dr. Nanez and Lauren will be great people to just tap. Lauren, if you want to throw your email in the chat, please. The ability to create some environments where groups of people come and they digest feedback. They look at some of the milestones if we're on track or not, and they make real-time collaborative decisions around any course corrections that are needed, or they evaluate data and information, decide if we need to, stay down the path that we're on or make some shifts. It's just, I believe, a high quality learner-centered leadership practice to really think about. So first of all, I'd recommend number one, really connect with our Ector friends down in Texas. Number two, I had a shout out by name, Superintendent Craig Heath, my guy up in Northern Ohio. Us Buckeye fans get excited. I think he's a Browns fan though. But Dr. Heath not only really led a process with Learner Center Collaborative, create their framework for the future, and North Star. But I loved some of the more intimate things that he did to make sure that the entire community was able to have a voice. I'll drop in an example of their framework for the future, just so you have the website link there in the chat. But I also want to showcase something he did that I thought was pretty unique as a learner-centered leader. And this is more of a communication strategy than anything. As the process was taking place, he had about 50, 60 people in the room. Uh, but you would have thought by the way he communicated and engaged his entire community, you would think that there were 5,000 people contributing to the process because he maintained crystal clear communication throughout the entire process. And folks were always being calibrated on what the guiding coalition was doing, what they were trying to accomplish, and what was headed up next. So just shout out to the Superintendent Heath for that one practice, and also share that throughout the practice, we had some conversations with him about what's next. So we've got this North Star, now what's next? And he had already started thinking about some leadership structures that he needed to put in place internally at the district office in collaboration with his site leaders to start creating some opportunities for some design sprints around some really key big ideas that he had, which means he had to have an idea of the capacity of his team. He had to already invest in their understanding of these learner-centered transformations that he had dreamed up, and then C, he had to create the runway for them to be able to double down on the work and design some pretty cool experiences for his kids to have. So I just want to shout him out for his vision and his practice around that, not just for the communication side of it, but for all the leadership behind the scenes that no one ever sees to make sure the team is structured, they're calibrated, and they're aligned in their thinking to really drive some of the work forward. Appreciate the space, Ali. I would love to hear you think a little bit out loud too.
I want to share about one of the school visits that we got to do when we were all together for our LCC retreat in Hawaii. So one of the schools that we got to visit was called Halukumana on the island of Oahu, and their school just really is so able to reach all of our school design elements. Their identity is so extremely clear. They're a native Hawaiian school, and so their like mission and vision is all around, those native Hawaiian culture values and traditions, and how to really foster lifelong learners who are able to have an impact around the world. And their identity is just ingrained in every single thing that they do, which really creates clear coherence, one of our enabling conditions right across the entire system. They begin every school day with this beautiful, like, opening welcoming ceremony that's led by different teachers and students actually each day. And their whole community gathers together outside in this beautiful circle. And that's how they start every day. They have an amazing small learning community, and there's about 20 students per grade level. And they have a team teaching structure. So actually, there's like almost always two teachers collaborating on some kind of interdisciplinary work, supporting the students as they learn. And they're really deeply connected to real world learning. All of their lessons are really embedded in their identity and their vision for their school. So on Wednesdays, they have that whole day to really engage in field work. I got to go with a group that is learning about canoeing and the history of voyaging. And I got to learn so much from students about geography and navigation and how to build a canoe. And they are able to really leverage the partnerships of their community, which is another enabling condition, right? So they've like partnered with all different organizations. Specifically to help them like achieve their mission and vision, and their teachers get that time to collaborate and plan as well. So you can see really clear elements of distributed leadership in that example.
Awesome. All right, you all ready to move on to the next question?
Got another question? Let's go.
Yeah. Well, some of you are kind of touching on this already in some of our examples. And I think just keeping with the theme of like, how do we elevate some of the work that's happening in our current schools and districts? I'd love for you to share a little bit more about how learner-centered transformations are led. What structures do you see are enabling the systems? How are they able to set up the right level of touch points? And like we've talked about communication, like how are they bringing their communities along so that it's not one step forward, two steps back? So if you could share maybe a couple key things that we've learned along the way.
Yeah, I'll jump in, just kind of rip a few things off real quick. I want to shout out last year, our connections cohort in March of 2024, we visited Logan County Schools in Kentucky, just south of here, the great state of Ohio, just for the record. And at Logan County Schools, I was captivated by this one driving question that I hear learner-centered leaders across the country ask all the time, like, how do we measure the impact? I've talked to several superintendents, several site leaders across the country here recently in our partnership work here at Learner Center Collaborative. And we often get this question of my board or my communities asking us, how is this improving student achievement? And not that it's a distractor, but you can tell like the conversation about how do we measure what matters is really something that's on the mind of leaders across the country. In Logan County Schools, I'll just share one quick example. That way we can keep popcorning here. Logan County Schools has created their pillars of success. It's an opportunity for them to create, I won't say a dashboard, but some key focus areas aligned to their North Star. As a school district, they have a number of areas where they generate some data that filters into these four pillars. The one I'll draw your attention to as you click on that website is the one around well-being, specifically driving some of their success and impact connected to their learner profile. As you can see, the district still is reporting out on achievement and growth, just like we do in a traditional accountability structure, but it is important to their community to have a learner-centered structure in place where they're able to measure the impact of their learner profile on their learners throughout the system K-12. So again, not to dominate time, but just to shout out Logan County Schools in Kentucky as one district to check out who has some pretty cool structure.
I can build on that. I want to shout out Dr. Luis Ibarra, who is down here in Escondido Union School District, a K-8 school system here in Southern California. First and foremost, his approach. He has been engaged deeply in all of the work, all of the co-construction process, and when he speaks with warmth, he speaks with confidence, and he just brings you in because he understands the intricacies and can make personal connections to the vision of shifting towards learner-centered. A structure that I want to highlight that Escondido USD leverages is their design team. Picture this, 65 folks that come together monthly And the composition of this team, you have teachers, school leaders, district leaders, classified staff, labor partners, parents, all collectively working through defining the framework for the future, listening to what was collected from the student forums, unpacking that, and then defining their learner profile, defining their learning model, and then putting together their big moves. And one of their big moves, and I know we have Miss Norton on here, principal at Hidden Valley Middle School, was to redesign all 23 schools. That's big, that's audacious, that's bold, call it what you will. But they are on track. They now have 12 of their 23 schools engaging in a redesign process. And so by leveraging that guiding coalition, they had community whisperers, they had positive gossipers bringing information in and pushing information out. So as a community, they did this together. No surprises and a lot of celebration with that energy that was put together by that structure of having, they call it their design team, but it truly functions like a guiding coalition. So huge kudos to Escondido USD. How about you, Miss Allie or Miss Katina?
I just was going to say something really similar to you. I love that you called it positive gossipers. I was going to say, like, there's two things. One is communication, like, especially when you're trying to make a change, like, there's no such thing as too much communication to all stakeholders, right? Whether you have a leadership team or guiding coalition or your staff, parents, families, students, right? I just think there's no such thing as like talking about it too much. The more you can talk about it, the better. And then additionally, when you talk about it, every conversation is an opportunity to get feedback, right? And so the more like open you appear and the more feedback that you seek, right? The more the more your plan is going to be as complete as possible and consider all different perspectives. And then two, the more buy-in you're going to have.
Yeah, I was going to kind of piggyback on that as well with this idea of just the design process, which we like to leverage a lot with our partners. I think all too often, especially as school leaders, we see that there's a challenge or a problem and we want to jump to a solution. And what is great about the design process is that we really better understand the context that we're walking into, and we take time to really empathize and have those forums and get some early feedback. And then throughout the process, continue to evolve that. The other thing I was going to recommend is just the idea of doing these kind of like bright spots walks, you know, as you initiate some type of change in the system. I'm not going to call it an initiative because I think that we've all been burned by those in the past. But, you know, if you've got some plans in place, you need to go out and back to the point of like celebrating people. Go look for it, like surface it, make sure that people know that you are present and engaged, and can give them those pats on the back for taking those risks. And then the second thing is to do some like discovery visits of your own, where you get out of your own context and go and see what could be possible in other systems so that you can learn from those that have maybe gone first or a little further along in your journey. And, you know, we have a lot of great, amazing partners that we work with. And, you know, within a couple hours drive, you can go and get really inspired by what's possible.
Can I add something in real quick? So when I left the classroom and got in administration, Debbie Humbert, special ed department chair at Northwest High School, I call her out by name. She told me, she goes, Marlon, like she's old school. She put her finger in my chest. She goes, don't you ever forget what it's like to be in the classroom. And I have held on to that advice every single day of my career, to not forget what it's like to be in the classroom. And it's really pushed me to always pay attention to what our staff needs. I would love to highlight just a couple things. Cesar, I want to pull you in here in just a few seconds, but I want to focus on capacity building and the importance of us as learner-centered leaders really having a really good, really intimate pulse check on what our staff needs. I know as a superintendent and as a building leader, sometimes I forgot to pulse check what our staff is ready for. And Katina, I know you and I have collaborated a lot. I mean, foot was down on the gas, 100 mile an hour. Let's go, a pace to evolve our school system. But I am starting to observe some really great learner-centered leaders across this country who are able to accelerate the pace of their learner-centered transformations, but also making sure that they're building capacity in their staff. For just a second, I'd love to shout out Superintendent Michael Lowhead in Hampton Township School District in Pennsylvania, as well as a number of other leaders up there. But they partner with Learner Center Collaborative to focus on capacity building of their staff. They've created this cross-district professional development community called Innovation Cohorts, where staff members from different school districts, and we're not worried about stealing each other's talent. We're just committed to this cause of building learner center educators across our region. But they've really invested in this capacity building opportunity to really accelerate the number of trailblazers and those really setting the horizon around what's possible for our learners in a learner-centered environment by giving them access to these innovation cohorts. I dropped the link in the chat if you want to check out our innovation cohorts, the Learner Center Collaborative. But I just want to shout out the importance of really paying attention to what teachers need specifically, not forgetting what it's like to be in the classroom. Cesar, I'd love for you to extend a little bit because I know you're building some capacity and some leaders in a couple partner districts. Could you talk to us, not on the teacher side of it, but could you talk to us a little bit about what you're doing in Santa Ana with some of the leaders around capacity building connected to their North Star?
Absolutely, and this is a tribute to Deputy Superintendent Dr. Lorraine Bettis, who is very thoughtful in how do we tend to the needs of the various elevations of leaders in the system. And so by design, we have capacity building taking place at the school leaders, principal level. And we do monthly sessions and really orientation around how to lead this work, how to build capacity with this work. And then separate and apart, we're running a leadership academy for the assistant principals. And so my partner and I, Kate Weisberg, we are making sure we are syncing the experiences so everybody at the school leadership capacity is getting a similar experience and understanding and capacity development to really roll out their framework for the future. But Santa Ana doesn't stop there because I want to give you some context. This is a system of 53 schools, nearly 40,000 students. So it's a very, very big system. We also have an innovation design cohort who is focused on your instructional coaches and building their capacity. So they're looking at the various elevations and really supporting for a successful rollout. The other, I'd like to point out Superintendent Heather Golly, who's on this call. And I know, as we've rolled out this work, there was some leadership changes. And while we could have moved forward with the work, she really had a pulse on what do my leaders need? And right now, what they need is for us to slow down, build capacity, build energy, and then move forward. And so it's really about knowing the needs of those who are leading the work and adapting, adjusting as necessary.
Love it, love it, love it. So I'm going to pose a question to our group here. And this came from an anonymous attendee, but I want to value the voices of our attendees. And here's a question that was posed to us. The question is, what if your leadership is wonderful, very thoughtful and authentic, but the current point of view is to shy away from the notion of releasing power to the teachers? I love this question. Second half of that is, what are some successful discussions that we could offer our attendees to consider engaging back in their school communities to open up their local leaders' minds to consider releasing some of that quote unquote power to their staff? Anybody want to share a few comments on that, please?
Yeah, happy to. I think one of the non-negotiables is as a system, you got to have ultra clarity on where you want to head, sketch out a co-constructed game plan, and then get the heck out of the way. Folks want to create. Folks want to energize around developing something that's contributing to a greater purpose. So I would say the onus of us as leaders, regardless of the elevation, is we are responsible for making sure we have clarity in the direction we're going. We got to get people to buy into co-creating that game plan and then give people permission. Matter of fact, exact that everybody in the system is failing forward, right? Folks need to have that explicit permission that you need to be creative. That is who we are, and that's what we're about. So a declaration needs to be provided, direction, then permission to fail forward.
I agree. I think that that clear direction is so important. I also think sometimes there's something like really at the root of a leader's fear if they're struggling to kind of like relinquish some of their control. And so, like, helping to get at the root of like what is that worry and really just being a partner there for them, so that they feel like they're not going to be alone in taking on this challenge. And hopefully, like, shifting the mindset of like, instead of, being alone, the best part about distributive leadership is that as the school leader, you're not expected to be this genius, perfect person with every single answer all the time at the tip of your tongue, right? Instead, you can lean on the wisdom of the entire community, and know that, like, together as a group, you are the all collectively the smartest people that you can be versus like just one person. And so, honestly, once you start, it becomes this relief. Like, I don't have to solve this huge major problem by myself. I can really draw upon all of the amazing talent that I have in my district or school.
I know we have one other question to get to. The only thing I would add to that is just kind of Allie mentioned it earlier about just cultivating different mindsets. And I think that, leaders also need to be, it's not just about the classroom level, right? This is a system shift in mindsets. And so one of the activities that works really well is exposing folks to the world that we currently live in, right? We're no longer an industrial model. Our kids are, we need to prepare them for jobs that we don't even know, what's going to happen in the next couple of years. So if you can get leaders in a space to really look at some different data points about how quickly the world has evolved and what the world of work is looking for, that can help them see that, oh yeah, this is more of a collaborative, collective approach. It's not something that I can do just by myself because I wear the hat of leader.
Yeah. Out there something just like dip the toe in the water, right? So if I was that type of leader, you really asked me to get an uncomfortable mindset that I'm not used to leading. So I may offer the idea, what if we rethink the types of committees that we have in our campus or the committees that we have in our district, right? The attendance committee, the positive culture behavior committee, the committee on the, but can we rethink them as not being committees, but as Cesar said earlier today, some collaborative design teams? And could we pick one big move, and just explore this idea of if we all sat at the table to, co-design, co-explore what might be possible? Could that inspire a new type of mindset in that leader that might welcome more collaborative type conversations where you're willing to use the words from the question, release some of that power, and consider it more of empowering those folks sitting at the table to dream up what might be possible for kids. I may push to just dabble in it first to see if it might inspire some different emotions around what the staff's capacity was to really inspire what might be possible. The hard part, Brittany, our colleague Brittany Griffin says it all the time. The hardest part of our job is to cut off good conversation. I know we've had dynamite dialogue. We apologize for not getting to all of our questions that were posed in the chat. But we did pull a few in. Some closing comments here before we come to a close to the webinar. Again, thank you for being with us. We'd love to open it up to our teammates, Ali, Katina, Cesar. Any final comments that you have for our guests before we come to a close?
I'll just leave it as this work is messy. Challenge each and every one of us, including all four of us that are on the screen, to be bold, be audacious. It's not easy to shift the status quo, but it is an imperative. So, lean into the messiness.
I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to share. And I think that this is where we get to like refill our cups, right, together as leaders to get inspiration from each other and kind of come together as a community. So thank you for joining us and giving me the opportunity to fill my cup.
Yeah, and I would just grateful for those of you that were able to attend today. We know it's often hard to step away from a busy day of our roles and responsibilities. I'm a big relationship person, and I think that education is a relational business. So my biggest advice is to just really double down on relationships and culture. And find ways to connect with folks. Step away from the email, step away from the texting. We need to get back to having conversations face to face, like elbow to elbow, doing this work together. So thank you so much for being here, everybody. I had a blast.
Really appreciate everybody coming. This is to close us out. If anything resonated with you today, please share it in the discussion and the chat with us, please. Or if you see opportunities where in your own local context as a learner-centered leader that you believe you can evolve your practice to be more impactful for the learners that you serve. We'd love to hear some of your ideas in the chat as we close out. I do want to share a couple things on slide 20. I don't know why I'm even counting slides right now. Slide 25, ladies and gentlemen. I want to share with you, we've got a number of resources at Learner Center Collaborative. If you want to check out our website at learnercenter.org, you'll see we've got a number of opportunities to not only just partner with us to support your learner center visions, but to also just access some great learner center practices from practitioners all across the country. You'll see resources connected to blogs, articles, some of the research we're engaged in, but also some events we're connected with, webinars that we offer, as well as some learner center courses as well. One of our features right now, we are actively recruiting for our Learner Center Collaborative Connections cohort for 25-26 school year. If you're interested in that, please check that out on the website and give us a ping if you might be interested. Last but not least, on behalf of the Learner Center Collaborative family, we just want to say thank you for all that you do. We know you have the most important jobs in the country, influencing the most important people in the world, our youth. We know that it's not just an important job, but it's a tough one. It takes a big heart and special people like you. So thank you for all that you do. Continue the great work. And when your spring break comes, please keep the computer closed, invest in yourself, recharge so you can come back refreshed to celebrate your kids as we close out the end of the school year. Thank you again for being with us. Appreciate you and have a good rest of the day. And thank you to our panelists. Take care, everybody.